My name is Celestina Monroe. I'm 34 years old. And before I tell you what I did, the moment I finally stopped being my family's reasonable one, you need to understand something. I didn't wake up one day and decide to go to war with my own parents. I learned how to swallow discomfort a long time ago. I learned how to smile through it, pay through it, and call it love. But that night on Maple Street, I saw my children's worth being measured like leftovers. And something in me snapped so cleanly it felt like silence breaking. It started with a workday that ran 2 hours over schedule. The kind of day where your phone keeps buzzing, your inbox grows teeth, and every time you glance at the clock, you feel your chest tighten. I called my mom from the parking garage, already apologizing before she even answered. "Mom, my meeting's running late. Can you keep the twins until early evening?" Her voice came back smooth as satin. "Of course, honey." That should have been my first warning. My mother rarely volunteered extra time with my children, Caleb and Mia, without making it sound like a favor I'd owe her later. But that day she sounded almost pleased. At exactly 7 o'clock p.m., I pulled into their driveway on Maple Street and sat for half a second with my hands on the wheel, staring at the house I grew up in. It was still the same calm, suburban picture, trimmed shrubs, warm porch light, the kind of place real estate agents call ideal for families. I told myself I was lucky my kids had grandparents nearby. Then I stepped out of my car and heard children laughing. The laughter wasn't together. It was separated, like two different worlds existed under the same roof. I used my key and let myself in quietly. The air smelled like pot roast and warm gravy, comfort food, the kind my mother weaponized as proof she was a good person. The voices came from the dining room, and when I reached the doorway, my stomach dropped so fast it felt like my ribs were collapsing inward. My sister's kids, Sophia and Liam, sat at the formal dining table like little royalty. Their plates were full: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, crystal glasses of milk beside their forks like it was a holiday. My father sat at the table too, newspaper folded, chewing slowly. My sister Rebecca lounged in his recliner with her phone, not even pretending to be part of the moment. And my children? My 7-year-old twins were outside, cross-legged on the back porch in October. Through the glass door, I could see them sharing a handful of peanut butter crackers like they were camping, not eating dinner. Caleb's shoulders were hunched in that protective way he got when he didn't want to be noticed. Mia stared at the table inside like she was watching something she wasn't allowed to touch. I stood there for a second, invisible, the way I'd trained myself to be when my family was doing something I didn't like. Then my mother breezed past me with dirty plates and a bright, performative smile. "Oh, Celestina, perfect timing," she chirped. "We just finished up dinner." Finished. Like it was normal that my kids were outside with crumbs, while everyone inside had second helpings. I walked to the porch door and opened it. Cold air rushed in, sharp and clean, like it was trying to wake me up. "Caleb, Mia." I lowered myself beside them. "How was your day?" Caleb answered in that careful voice he'd developed, the one that meant he was protecting himself. "Fine." "Did you have fun with Sophia and Liam?" Mia shook her head immediately. She hadn't learned how to lie politely yet. "They played inside." "Grandma said we were too loud," Caleb added, eyes still down. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. I looked back through the glass. My mother was stacking plates. My sister didn't even look up. "What did everyone have for dinner?" I asked softly, already knowing. From inside, Sophia's voice carried with the effortless confidence of a child who has never had to wonder if she belongs. "Pot roast. It was really yummy." I turned back to my twins. "What did you two eat?" Caleb held up the empty sleeve of crackers like evidence. "These. Grandma said there wasn't enough dinner for everyone." My eyes flicked to the slow cooker on the counter. It was still half full. There was enough food in that pot to feed 4 more people easily. I stood, slow and deliberate, and stepped back inside. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice level, "let's get you both some real food before we go home." My mother moved too fast, like she could physically block the truth. "Oh, Celestina, they're fine." "They're children," I said, turning toward the slow cooker. My sister finally lifted her eyes from her phone, annoyance pinching her mouth. "We don't want to dirty more dishes for no reason. They already ate." "They ate crackers," I said evenly, while their cousins had pot roast. My father looked up, eyes flat, the way he got when he wanted to end a conversation without admitting anything. "They need to understand the natural order of things," he said. Natural order. Like my children were supposed to accept being less, as if it was biology instead of cruelty. I made 2 plates. Generous portions. I didn't ask permission. I didn't explain. I just carried the plates to the porch and set them down in front of my kids. Caleb's face lit up, not with joy, but with relief. The kind of relief that tells you a child has been hungry long enough to give up hope. Mia's eyes got shiny. She took a bite like she didn't trust the food would stay. As they ate, I forced myself to speak calmly, because rage in front of kids is its own kind of damage. So, I said, glancing back inside, what did everyone do today while I was at work? Watch TV, Caleb said between bites. Did you play any games? Sophia and Liam exchanged a look inside before Sophia answered. We played Xbox upstairs in Grandpa's game room. That sounds fun, I said. Did Caleb and Mia play too? Silence. The kind that presses on your skin. Finally, Liam shrugged. The game room is for older kids. He was 9 months older than my twins. I nodded slowly, filing it away like a receipt. What about outside? I asked. It was beautiful today. Rebecca waved one hand without looking up. We played in the backyard a bit, but you know how it is. Different groups. Different comfort levels. Different comfort levels. The words hung there, heavy with meaning. I repeated them quietly. Different comfort levels. What does that mean? My mother jumped in too fast. Different ages, different energy. Some kids are just more compatible. But my twins were social butterflies at school. They had friends of every kind, every background. The only place they suddenly became incompatible was here. I looked at my children, who were listening with that painful attention kids give to conversations about their own worth. Then I did the only thing I could do without exploding. I helped them gather their backpacks. Come on, I said, voice steady. We're leaving. My mother's smile cracked. Don't go angry. We can talk about this. Talk about what? I asked. About how my children deserve different treatment? Rebecca stood up, irritated now. You're making a big deal out of nothing. We're just being realistic about social realities. I'm being a mother, I said, and the words tasted like steel. The drive home to San Bernardino was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that feels like a bruise forming. Then Mia's small voice rose from the back seat. Mama, why can't we go to the barbecues? I swallowed, hands tightening on the wheel. Because some people aren't ready to welcome everyone yet, sweetie. Caleb's voice came next, too direct for 7 years old. Because we look different from Sophia and Liam? My chest tightened like something was squeezing my heart. Yes, I admitted. Some people have very small minds about differences. Mia hesitated, then asked the question that shattered what was left of my denial. Is it because Daddy is black and you're white? I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. The silence in the car was thick enough to drown in. Yes, I said softly, that's part of it. Caleb stared out the window. Does Daddy know Grandma and Grandpa think we're different? My throat burned. Daddy knows the world can be unfair sometimes, I said carefully. And that's why he and I work so hard to make sure you know how special you are. Mia's eyes filled. But Grandma and Grandpa are supposed to think we're special too. I looked at my kids, my beautiful kids, and realized I didn't have a good answer because the evidence was sitting on that porch with cracker crumbs. Inside the house, Derek was making dinner when we walked in. He took one look at my face and went still. Rough afternoon? He asked, but his voice already knew. We need to talk, I said, nodding toward the kids as they shuffled inside. But Caleb didn't even wait. He walked straight to Derek, looked up at him with the devastating honesty only a child has, and said, Dad, Grandpa says we can't go to neighborhood parties because people aren't comfortable with mixed kids. Derek's hand froze mid-motion. His expression shifted, hurt, anger, then something that looked like a terrible confirmation. And in that moment, I understood this wasn't just about one dinner. This was about everything I'd been refusing to see. Derek didn't speak right away. He set the spatula down like it was made of glass, then crouched in front of Caleb and Mia, steady, gentle, the way he always was when the world tried to make them feel small. Did Grandpa say that exactly? He asked, voice quiet but tight around the edges. Caleb nodded. He said, we need to learn what the world is like. Mia's little fingers twisted the hem of her hoodie. Grandma said some families are more comfortable together. Derek inhaled through his nose like he was forcing air past a wall. You two did nothing wrong, he said. Nothing. Not your skin, not your hair, not your faces, not your family. Mia's eyes searched his. Then why? Because some adults are afraid of what they don't understand, Derek said. And sometimes they hide that fear inside rules that sound polite. Caleb frowned hard. Like comfort levels. Derek's gaze flicked to me. That one glance carried 9 years of restraint. 9 years of swallowing his own discomfort so I wouldn't have to choose. We'll talk about it, he told the kids, voice softening. But for now, wash up. Dinner's almost done. When they went to their rooms, Derek stood slowly, walked into the kitchen, and closed the door behind him like he needed the privacy to finally let his face change. He didn't yell. That would have been easier to dismiss. He looked at me with that calm, aching disappointment that hurts worse than anger. How long has it been like this? He asked. I opened my mouth to deny it, reflex, muscle memory, but no sound came out. Because the truth was, it had always been like this. We'd just run out of ways to pretend it wasn't. I don't know, I whispered. Derek leaned back against the counter. Celestina. The way he said my name, full, careful, was the way he said it when he was trying not to lose faith in me. I stared at the sink, at the little plastic dinosaur cup Mia used, at the small, normal objects that had been holding my life together while the foundation rotted. I thought it was personality, I said. My mom being my mom, Rebecca being Rebecca, my dad being old school. I thought they were awkward, not racist, he finished, and the word landed between us like a dropped plate. My stomach turned. I didn't want to label them, I said quickly, like that made me noble, like that protected anyone. Derek exhaled, slow. You didn't label them. They labeled our kids. Silence. I felt a sting behind my eyes. But it wasn't just sadness. It was humiliation. The kind that comes when you realize you've been defending people who were never defending you. And that humiliation had roots. Deep roots. Because this didn't start with Caleb and Mia on a porch. It started with me, 18 years old, clutching my first paycheck like it was proof I mattered. I can still see that kitchen in my parents' house, the one with the honey-colored cabinets and the little ceramic rooster on the counter. My mother sat at the table with a grocery circular spread out like a plea. Honey, she said, voice fragile in a way that always made me straighten my spine. Now that you're working, do you think you could help sometimes, just for groceries? We're doing our best, but things are tight. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like family. So I gave her $20 here, $50 there. I felt proud when I could do it, like I'd earned my place. What I didn't understand, what no one tells you when you're the good kid in a family that runs on guilt, is that generosity becomes expectation faster than you can blink. It became my role. Not daughter, not equal. Resource. When I started college and landed a part-time job in pharmaceutical sales, my income grew, and so did their emergencies. I remember the first big one, my father's root canal. My mother called with trembling urgency. Insurance only covers half, Celestina, and you know how proud your dad is. He hates accepting help. I wired $1,000 that afternoon, hands shaking as I hit send, feeling like a hero. Then came Rebecca's car. Dad called that time, his tone heavy like I was the only rope keeping the family from drowning. Rebecca's Honda broke down. She needs it to get to her shift at the salon. She's a single mom, Celestina. She's already struggling. $2,500 disappeared from my account without hesitation. Then the furnace. Then the roof leak. Then Sophia needed new braces. Then Liam needed an after-school program. Then my parents fell behind and needed just a little help on the mortgage. Each request arrived wrapped in just enough realism to make refusal feel cruel and just enough guilt to make compliance feel like love. And every time I said yes, something inside them relaxed. Like their survival instinct had locked onto me and decided, good, that's the one. I told myself I was helping. But if I'm being honest, I was paying admission to belong. Derek came into my life when I was already trained. He met my family early, before our kids, before the house, before the big promotions, and even then, he noticed things I refused to name. The first time we had dinner at my parents' house as a couple, my mother kept asking Derek what he did exactly, like she was checking him for loose change. My father asked where Derek came from in that slow, careful way that sounded polite unless you'd heard it enough to understand the undertone. Rebecca made jokes about my phase of dating outside my usual type. I laughed too loudly. I changed subjects. I told Derek later, they don't mean it like that. He didn't push. He just watched. And after we got married, after Derek and I started pulling in solid six-figure salaries, that's when the requests came faster. Bigger. Hungrier. My promotions triggered them like clockwork. Bonus season meant the phone would ring. Celestina, sweetheart, Mom would say, already leaning on the pet name like it was a lever. Your dad's blood pressure medication is going up, and we're scared. Celestina, Dad would murmur. Rebecca's behind again. The kids shouldn't suffer. And I would say yes, 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 because saying no felt like stepping out of the family picture frame. But what I didn't track, what I deliberately refused to track, was how the giving only went one direction. When Derek and I bought our first house and needed help painting, everyone suddenly had conflicts. When I had my gallbladder removed and needed someone to watch the twins, Rebecca was swamped. When we wanted one weekend away for our anniversary, no one could babysit. But when they needed money, my phone rang within minutes. Derek tried to tell me, not in a controlling way, not with ultimatums, just with questions that made my stomach twist because the answers were obvious. Babe, he said once, after we'd sent my parents another temporary mortgage payment, when was the last time anyone in your family helped us with anything? Not money, time, support, anything. I snapped back out of defense, because that's what trained daughters do. Family dynamics are complicated, I said. They show love differently than your family. Not everyone is demonstrative. Derek looked at me like he wanted to believe that, like he was trying so hard to make room for my denial because he loved me. But he was also piecing together a bigger picture I kept stepping away from. The subtle comments about how Caleb and Mia might fit in at certain schools. The way my mother bought Sophia and Liam matching holiday outfits and got my twins something generic, like they were an afterthought. The way Rebecca talked about neighborhood traditions, like they were laws of nature. The way my father became quiet, cold quiet, when Derek spoke too confidently, like Derek wasn't supposed to take up space in their house. And through it all, I kept paying, because I believed being the one who helped made me safe. It made me needed. It made me loved. Until the porch. Until crackers. Until the words natural order came out of my father's mouth like he was explaining weather. Back in my kitchen, Derek's voice was low, almost rough now. Celestina, he said, you see it now, right? I stared at the countertop. I thought about Mia's eyes when she looked through that glass door. I thought about Caleb's careful voice. I thought about my mother's smooth of course honey on the phone. I think I've been seeing around it for a long time, I admitted. Like if I looked straight at it, it would mean I had to do something. And now? Derek asked. My mouth went dry, because now meant choosing. Now meant war. Now meant the kind of boundary my family would call cruel. I tried to speak, but the words caught, so the truth came out in a whisper. I don't know how to stop being the one who fixes it, I said. Derek stepped closer, his hands warm on my arms. You don't have to fix them, he said. You have to protect us. I closed my eyes, and in the dark behind my eyelids, I saw my twins on that porch again. Not just hungry for pot roast, hungry for belonging, hungry for proof that their own blood would choose them. I opened my eyes. Okay, I said, voice shaking but clear. Tell me what you've been holding back. Derek's jaw tightened, and then he said quietly, carefully, like he knew this might break something in me. Your mother asked me once if I was really prepared to provide for you long term, he said, like I was a risk. My breath caught. When? I asked. At Mia's 4th birthday party, he said. She pulled me aside and framed it like concern, like she was being thoughtful. I felt cold spread through my chest. And your dad, Derek continued, suggested we wait several years before having children to make sure we were compatible. Compatible, like love had an expiration date if it didn't match their comfort. And Rebecca, Derek said, voice darker now, asked if I worried about raising mixed children in today's climate. She said it like she was being helpful. I stood there, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles went white. All those moments I'd smoothed over. All those silences I'd excused. All those times Derek swallowed his pride so I wouldn't have to choose. And now my children were paying the price for my denial. The stove timer beeped, sharp and normal. Derek turned it off without looking. What do we do? I asked, but the question wasn't really for him. It was for the version of me that still wanted to believe my family would magically become better if I just loved them harder. Derek's eyes held mine. We start by seeing the truth, he said. All of it. And then, I pressed. He took my hands. Then we stop funding the people who are teaching our kids to accept scraps, he said. And we stop sending our children back into rooms where they have to earn basic dignity. My throat burned, because I knew he was right. And because I knew what my family would do when the money stopped. They wouldn't just be offended. They'd panic. And panicked people don't show you love. They show you who they really are. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Derek's breathing evened out beside me, my mind replaying moments I'd filed away for years under not worth a fight. The way my mother's smile always tightened when Derek spoke too confidently. The way my father corrected him in small, unnecessary ways. Tone disguised as mentorship. The way Rebecca watched me pay for things with a look that wasn't gratitude, but expectation. I'd told myself those were quirks. I'd told myself every family had them. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. By morning, my decision had hardened into something cold and clear. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to plead. I was going to listen. At 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Mom! Celestina, sweetheart, she said, voice syrupy soft. I've been thinking about yesterday. Maybe we all got off on the wrong foot. Maybe. I want you to know we love you and the twins more than anything, she continued. If something came across wrong, that certainly wasn't our intention. Not we're sorry. Not we were wrong. Just the carefully polished, if you misunderstood. I felt something settle in my chest. A decision. Maybe you're right, I said calmly. I was probably tired and reading too much into things. The relief in her exhale was instant and revealing. Oh, good, she said. I knew you'd be reasonable. You always are. Reasonable. Her favorite word for manageable. Actually, I added, as if the thought had just occurred to me, I was thinking of stopping by later to apologize for overreacting. That would be wonderful, she said quickly. Rebecca will be here too. We can clear the air properly. Perfect. At noon, I drove toward Maple Street but parked 2 houses down. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, my heart pounding so loudly I wondered if they could hear it from inside. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing this to hear the truth without filters. I used my key and entered through the back door, stepping softly through the mudroom toward the sound of voices in the kitchen. I didn't announce myself. I didn't need to. Rebecca's voice reached me first, sharp, irritated. I can't believe she made such a scene out of nothing. Dad answered with that measured tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. The twins need to understand how the world works. Better they learn early. Exactly, Rebecca said. She acts like we're monsters for being realistic about social situations. My hands curled into fists. Mom sighed. Celestina's always been idealistic. She thinks love conquers everything. Well, that's not realistic with biracial children, Rebecca said casually, like she was commenting on the weather. The words hit me so hard my vision blurred. I leaned against the wall, forcing myself to stay silent. The thing is, Rebecca continued, Sophia and Liam's friends from school were going to be at that barbecue. I can't have them asking uncomfortable questions about why Caleb and Mia look nothing like the rest of our family. Mom hummed in agreement. The neighbors already notice. They ask questions. What do you tell them? Rebecca asked. Mom sighed again. The usual concerns. Whether Celestina really knew what she was getting into marrying Derek. Whether those children will have behavioral issues later. I felt bile rise in my throat. Dad cleared his throat. Mixed kids often struggle with identity. People worry about confusion. Confusion. Like my children didn't know exactly who they were. At least, Dad continued, we don't have to worry about Celestina staying upset long term. She always comes back when we need her. Rebecca laughed. She's too soft to hold a grudge. Remember the car loan thing? She got over it in a week and paid the insurance too. She's our safety net, Mom said comfortably. She might sulk, but she'll be back with her checkbook. And then, the line that cut something out of me permanently. Well, Mom said, almost cheerfully, Rebecca's children eat first. Celestina's wait for scraps. That's just how it has to be with biracial families. Rebecca didn't hesitate. The kids who look normal get priority. Normal. Dad nodded. Better they learn their place early. We're doing them a favor. I stood there in that hallway, listening to my parents and sister discuss my children like damaged goods, like something to manage, minimize, explain away. Not grandchildren. Not family. That's when the last piece of the woman who needed their approval quietly died. I stepped into the kitchen. The conversation stopped mid-breath. 3 faces turned toward me at once, guilty, startled, instantly rearranging themselves into politeness. Celestina, Mom said brightly, you're early. I was just telling Rebecca how much we enjoyed having the twins yesterday. The audacity made my hands shake. Were you? I asked flatly. Mom laughed nervously. Of course, they're such good kids. I looked at each of them slowly, memorizing their expressions. I came to get Mia's dance bag, I lied. She forgot it. Oh, let me help you, Mom said, already moving. I retrieved the bag from the hall closet and turned back. Actually, I said calmly, I heard everything you just said. The color drained from their faces in unison. What? Mom whispered. The part about my children being born to get leftovers, I continued. The part about them needing to learn their place. The part about me being your safety net. Silence crashed down like a dropped plate.
Celestina, honey, Dad started.
I heard every word, I said. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. Rebecca opened her mouth, then closed it. Mom tried again. You're taking things out of context. What context makes it okay to say my children deserve less because they're biracial? No one answered. I stepped closer to the counter. How much money have I given this family over the years? I asked quietly. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably. Dad's jaw tightened. We're family, Dad said. Family helps each other. You're right, I said. Family also protects each other's children. I walked toward the door, then stopped. You have time to think about what kind of grandparents you want to be, I said evenly, and whether your comfort is worth more than my children's dignity. Celestina, wait, Mom pleaded. We'll talk again, I said, hand on the doorknob. When you're ready to be honest about whether you want my children in your lives or just my money. I left without looking back. That afternoon, while Derek took the twins to school, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and my heart pounding. I logged into my banking app. This time I didn't look away. Transfers, wire payments, checks. Month after month, year after year. The numbers loaded slowly, cruelly. Derek came home and sat beside me as I scrolled. Celestina, he said finally. 3 years, I whispered. $49,000. I clicked further back. 5 years. 9 years. When the total appeared, it felt like a physical blow. $140,000, I said. I gave them nearly $140,000. Derek closed his eyes. That was our kids' college fund, he said quietly. Our future. I shut the laptop. They treated my children like scraps, I said, my voice eerily calm, while living on our money. Derek reached for my hand. What do you want to do? I thought of Mia's face through the glass, of Caleb's careful voice, of my mother saying normal-looking children get priority. I'm done funding people who think my children are less, I said. Derek nodded. Then we start tonight. That night, after the twins were asleep, Derek and I sat at the kitchen table with the lights low and our phones face down, like we were about to confess something dangerous. I felt hollowed out, not angry yet, just stripped. When you hear a number like that, I said quietly, staring at the dark window, it stops feeling abstract. It stops being help. It starts being theft with my permission. Derek didn't correct me. He just nodded. You didn't know, he said. Or maybe you knew pieces, but not the shape of it. I didn't want to know the shape, I admitted. Because if I did, I'd have to admit I chose them over us, over the kids. He reached across the table and took my hand. You chose peace, he said gently. They exploited it. The next morning, I took a personal day. Not to rest. To face the mess I'd been avoiding for nearly a decade. I started with my accountant. She was someone a colleague had recommended years ago, back when Derek and I talked about getting serious about financial planning and then never did. I emailed her first, then called. I need a full analysis of all outgoing transfers to family members over the last 9 years, I said. Everything documented. There was a pause on the line. That's a significant time frame, she said carefully. I know. Do you have the records? Yes, I said, unfortunately. She promised to get back to me within 48 hours. I didn't wait. I called a family lawyer next, someone Derek's firm had worked with tangentially. I didn't tell him the emotional details. I kept it clinical because I needed clarity more than comfort. I've been providing voluntary financial support to my parents and sibling for years, I explained. There's no court order, no written obligation, but it's become expected. And you want him to stop, he said. Yes. Then you can, he said plainly. You have zero legal obligation to continue. Voluntary support can be withdrawn at any time. What if they've structured their lives around it? I asked. That's not a legal consideration, he replied. That's an emotional one. I swallowed. What about co-signing? I asked. Mortgages, auto loans. That's where you need to be strategic, he said. You can't disappear overnight from those, but you can protect yourself, limit exposure, initiate exits. By the time I hung up, my hands were steady. Not because this was easy, because it was finally clear. 2 days later, my accountant called back. Her voice was calm, professional, and devastating. Celestina, based on documented transfers alone, you've provided approximately $139,200 in financial support over 9 years. I closed my eyes. That doesn't include informal gifts, cash assistance, or expenses you paid directly, she continued. Only traceable transfers. I pictured the slow cooker on my mother's counter. Half full. I need to ask, she added carefully. Were these gifts or loans? I thought about the conversations. We'll pay you back when things stabilize, just until Rebecca gets back on her feet. Temporary help. Mixed, I said. Some were framed as loans. Then you may have recovery options, she said. But I want to be honest. Pursuing repayment can be emotionally costly. I let out a breath that sounded like a laugh. I'm not chasing money, I said. I'm removing incentive. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I felt something colder, stronger, settle into place. Resolve. That evening, Derek and I talked logistics, not hypotheticals. Real steps. I want to stop everything, I said. All transfers, immediately. Derek nodded slowly. I agree. But you need to be prepared. For what? For panic, he said. For manipulation. For them to say and do desperate things. I leaned back in my chair. If strangers treated our children the way my family did, I said, what would you want me to do? He didn't hesitate. Cut contact. Then why should blood get a discount? It shouldn't, he said quietly. The next morning, I dismantled the system, piece by piece. First, I logged into my bank and canceled every automatic transfer, mortgage assistance, emergency fund contributions, insurance payments, all of it. Each confirmation screen felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 9 years. Then I called the mortgage company where I was listed as a co-borrower on my parents' refinanced loan. I need to understand my options for removal, I said. The representative didn't sugarcoat it. They'll need to qualify without your income, she said. If they can't, the property would need to be sold or refinanced with another qualified borrower. How long does that process take? 60 to 90 days. Perfect. Long enough for reality to settle in. Next, I called Rebecca's auto lender. I co-signed the loan, I said. I want a notation added that no refinancing or credit changes can occur without my written consent. That can be done immediately, the agent replied. By noon, I'd removed myself from their financial bloodstream. I didn't announce it. I didn't explain. I waited. The first call came that evening. Dad, Celestina, he said carefully, there seems to be a banking error. The mortgage assistance didn't transfer. There's no error, I said. Silence. What do you mean? I canceled it. Another pause, longer this time. You canceled it? Yes. Why would you do that? He asked, his voice tight. Because I'm no longer comfortable subsidizing people who think my children deserve less than their cousins. Celestina, he said slowly, if this is about something you think you overheard. I heard exactly what I heard, I said, and you agreed with it. We can talk this through, he said. Work something out. There's nothing to work out, I replied. Either my children are equal or they aren't. Of course they are. Then start acting like it, I said. Until then, the money stops. I ended the call. 20 minutes later, Rebecca called. What the hell is going on? She snapped. Dad says you pulled the mortgage help. I pulled all financial support, I said evenly. You can't do that, she said. I depend on that money. That sounds like a you problem. My car payment is not my responsibility, I cut in. Especially not after you said my children were born to get leftovers. That's not what I meant, she said quickly. It's what you said, I replied, word for word. Her voice shifted, sliding into panic. You're going to ruin Mom and Dad. I'm not ruining anyone, I said. I'm stopping my participation in funding people who devalue my family. You're being vindictive. I'm being done. Silence crackled on the line. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You have 90 days to figure out how to live on your actual income. No more car payments, no more emergency bailouts. And if we can't, then you'll learn, I said, the same way my children are learning. I hung up before she could respond. That night, Derek poured 2 glasses of wine and slid one toward me. Any regrets? He asked. I thought about the porch, the crackers, the word normal. No, I said, just clarity. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because when people lose access to your money, they don't ask why. They show you who they really are. The first week without my money was quiet. Too quiet. No screaming voicemails. No dramatic texts. No late-night sobbing calls. Just silence. And if I hadn't already lived inside my family's patterns for 34 years, I might have mistaken that silence for reflection. But Derek knew better. This is the calm before the storm, he said one night as we folded laundry. They're recalculating. He was right. The second week, the calls came. Not all at once. Strategic. Like a coordinated campaign. Mom started it. She didn't lead with anger. She never did. She led with tears. I don't understand how you could do this to us, she said, voice breaking just enough to sound authentic. We're your parents. I put the phone on speaker and kept folding socks. You told me my children should expect scraps, I said evenly. That's not what I meant, she cried. You're twisting everything. I'm repeating it, I replied. She shifted tactics quickly. We've structured our entire budget around your help, she said. We could lose the house, Celestina. Is that what you want? I paused, not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted my next words to be precise. What I want, I said, is for you to treat my children like grandchildren, not social liabilities. We do treat them well. You made them eat outside in October, I said. That's not well. That's exclusion. Her crying sharpened into accusation. You're punishing us for being honest about reality. No, I said. I'm protecting my kids from people who think racism is realism. She hung up on me. That was new. Rebecca tried rage. She called late, voice already heated. You have no idea what you've done, she snapped. My credit score is going to tank. I can't make the car payment without your help. I leaned back on the couch, watching Derek help Mia with homework. Then you'll need to sell the car, I said calmly. It's a Honda Civic, not a Mercedes, she shot back. Then it should be easy to replace with something you can afford. She screamed. Actually screamed. You're destroying this family. No, I said. I'm refusing to finance people who think my kids deserve less. She hung up too. By week 3, desperation had replaced anger. Dad showed up at our house on a Saturday morning, unannounced. Derek saw him through the front window and looked at me. Do you want me to handle it? He asked. No, I said. This one's mine. I opened the door. Dad stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders tight. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller. Celestina, he said, we need to talk like adults. I am, I replied. You're the one who showed up without calling. He sighed, stepping inside when I didn't move. This has gone far enough, he said. Your mother's beside herself. Rebecca's barely holding things together. We're family. I crossed my arms. Then explain something to me, I said. Why is your first concern money instead of my children? He frowned. That's not fair. You said my kids need to learn their place, I replied. Tell me what place that is. He opened his mouth, closed it. Tried again. Look, he said finally. Maybe we were insensitive, but destroying our financial stability... I didn't destroy anything, I cut in. I stopped paying for it. He rubbed his face. If we treat the kids equally, he said slowly, the support comes back, right? There it was. The transaction. Dad, I said quietly, if your love for my children is conditional on money, then it's not love, it's rent. His face hardened. You're being unreasonable. I'm being a mother, I said, and that means my children's dignity comes before your comfort. He left without saying goodbye. By the end of the month, reality hit them hard. The house went on the market. Rebecca picked up a second job at Target and started calling me less. Anger replaced by exhaustion. Mom sent long texts about sleepless nights and budget spreadsheets. I read them. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, because responding would reopen the negotiation. And there was nothing left to negotiate. At home, something unexpected happened. The twins changed. Not overnight, but noticeably. Caleb stopped asking if he'd done something wrong. Mia stopped whispering questions about why people didn't like them. Without the constant exposure to subtle rejection, they relaxed. They laughed more. They argued less. They slept better. One night, as Derek tucked them in, Caleb asked, Are we bad for not going to Grandma's anymore? Derek's voice was steady. No, we don't go places where people make us feel small. Mia nodded thoughtfully. I like places where people want us. I stood in the hallway and let myself cry silently. Because my kids were learning a lesson I should have learned decades ago. Love that costs your dignity is too expensive. At the end of the 5th week, Mom called again. Her voice was calmer this time, controlled. We've been thinking, she said. What if we start fresh? Regular family dinners. Everyone treated equally. I waited. And maybe, she continued, while we rebuild trust, you could help with essential expenses. Just the mortgage. There it was again. Change, leased, not owned. Mom, I said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. That's unfair. No, I replied. What's unfair is asking my children to accept less so you can live more comfortably. She went quiet. The money is never coming back, I said gently but firmly, no matter what changes you make. A long pause. I see, she said finally. For the first time, she actually did. Or at least, she realized the cord was truly cut. When the call ended, Derek sat beside me and squeezed my hand. You okay? He asked. I looked around our living room, at my kids' drawings on the fridge, at the future we were finally choosing. Yes, I said, for the first time in a long time. But I also knew something else. When comfort collapses, people either change, or they show you exactly who they were all along. And my family was about to do one or the other. By the 6th week, the messages changed. They stopped sounding angry. They stopped sounding wounded. They started sounding scared. Mom's text came first. Long, rambling paragraphs sent at odd hours, filled with budget math and phrases like temporary hardship and just until things stabilize. I didn't answer them. I learned quickly that any response, even a neutral one, became an opening. Rebecca tried a different angle. She showed up where she thought I'd feel exposed. At the grocery store. I was reaching for cereal when I heard my name spoken with forced cheer. Celestina! I turned to see her pushing a cart with exactly 3 items in it. Generic pasta, canned sauce, store-brand bread. No kids. No phone glued to her hand. She looked thinner. Tired. Hey, I said, keeping my tone flat. She smiled too brightly. Didn't expect to see you here. People buy groceries, I said. It happens. She laughed nervously and leaned closer, lowering her voice like we were sharing a secret. Look, I know things got heated, she said, but maybe we can find a middle ground. About? I asked. About the kids, she said quickly. About money. About family. There it was again. The triangle they always used. Kids, money, family, blended until you couldn't separate love from leverage. You said my children were born to get leftovers, I replied calmly. What's the middle ground on that? Her smile faltered. That's not what I meant, she said. I was talking about optics, social stuff. Optics that rank children, I said. No. Her voice sharpened. You're acting like I hate them. I'm acting like you showed me exactly how much you value them, I said. She crossed her arms. You're enjoying this. That surprised me. I'm enjoying not lying to myself, I said. There's a difference. She stared at me, then exhaled sharply. You think you're better than us now, she said. No, I replied. I think my kids deserve better than what you offered. She walked away without another word. That night, Derek found me sitting on the edge of the bed, shoes still on. They're unraveling, he said gently. I know, I replied, and I hate that part of me feels relieved. Relieved doesn't mean heartless, he said. It means you're no longer carrying something that wasn't yours. A few days later, something new happened. A message came in on Derek's phone. From Lena, his ex-girlfriend. I hadn't heard that name in years. Derek showed it to me immediately, his brow furrowed. Hey, random, I know. Your father-in-law reached out to me. Wanted to ask some questions. Thought you should know. My stomach tightened. Did he say what kind of questions? I asked. Derek scrolled. About compatibility. About whether I ever felt pressure raising kids outside my background. I let out a short, incredulous laugh. They're shopping for validation, I said. If they can't control me, they'll try to undermine you. Derek nodded. She told him it was inappropriate, then blocked him. I felt a flicker of gratitude toward a woman I'd never met, and then anger, sharp and clean. That evening, I called my father. He answered on the second ring. Why did you contact Derek's ex? I asked. Silence. I just wanted perspective, he said finally. You're not the only one affected by these choices. Derek is my partner, I said. Not a variable you get to test. You've changed, he said. Yes, I replied, because I stopped letting you triangulate my marriage to maintain your comfort. You're blowing this out of proportion, he said. No, I said. I'm finally seeing the proportions clearly. I hung up before he could respond. The next week, the house sold. Not for what they'd hoped. Not quickly enough to save their pride. Rebecca texted me a photo of a for rent sign outside a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside, followed by, This is what you wanted, right? I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed, What I wanted was for my children to be treated equally. This is what happened when you chose otherwise. I didn't send anything else. At home, Derek and I made decisions that felt radical and simple at the same time. We opened college accounts for the twins. Real ones, funded monthly with money that used to disappear into emergencies. We booked a short trip for the summer. Nothing extravagant. Just a promise to ourselves that our future wouldn't be perpetually postponed. And slowly, quietly, something else happened. The twins stopped asking about their grandparents. They stopped asking when the next visit would be. They filled the space with friends, activities, questions about robotics kits and dance music. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Mia said casually, I don't think Grandma likes us very much. The statement was calm, observational, not wounded. Derek crouched beside her. What makes you think that? She didn't ask about my recital, Mia said. But it's okay. Mrs. Alvarez asked, and Coach Jenna asked. I felt my throat tighten. Caleb added, People who don't ask don't get to know you. He was 8 years old, and already wiser than I'd been at 34. That night, Derek and I sat on the couch in the dark, the house humming with quiet. Do you think they'll actually change? I asked. He considered it. Some will, some won't. The question is whether you'll need them to. I thought about the version of myself that would have begged for apologies, for gestures, for proof. I don't, I said, not anymore. A month later, an email arrived from my mother. Short. No theatrics. No math. We've started family counseling. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know we're trying to understand what we did. I read it twice, then once more. I didn't reply. Not yet, because effort without consistency is just another performance. And I was done applauding rehearsals. But I felt it then, a shift. Not reconciliation, not trust, something else. The beginning of consequences settling into bones. And sometimes that's the only soil change can grow in. The first real apology didn't come with tears. It came with silence. 6 months of it. No calls asking for, just a little help. No surprise visits. No emotional essays, dressed up as accountability. Just absence. And that absence told me more than any speech ever could. During those 6 months, my parents lost the house. Not dramatically, not with foreclosure notices taped to the door. They sold it, quietly. The house on Maple Street, the one that had been my childhood landmark, the one my mother used to call the heart of our family, went to a young couple with a baby on the way. I found out because a neighbor posted congratulations online. I stared at the photo longer than I expected. I didn't feel victorious. I felt final. Rebecca texted me a week later. We moved into an apartment in Riverside, 2 bedrooms. It's temporary. Temporary was her favorite word. I didn't respond, because this time temporary meant real. Derek noticed the shift before I did. "They've stopped negotiating," he said one night as we cleaned up after dinner. "That's new." It was. The rage had burned off. The guilt tactics had failed. The bargaining phase had collapsed under the weight of reality. What remained was grief and fear, and something that looked suspiciously like reflection. Rebecca took a second job for real this time, not a dramatic "I'll figure it out" declaration, but a grind. Target in the evenings, salon during the day. She sold the Civic and bought an older Corolla in cash. My parents downsized again 3 months later, moved to an even smaller place they could afford on their retirement income. Not because I told them to, because they had to. And in that forced humility, something changed. Not all at once. Not cleanly, but unmistakably. My father stopped posting opinion pieces on social media. My mother stopped talking about how things used to be. Rebecca stopped calling herself unlucky. They were busy surviving. Meanwhile, something else happened. My children thrived. Caleb's robotics team qualified for a regional competition. He spent evenings hunched over gears and wires, explaining torque ratios to Derek with a seriousness that made us laugh and ache at the same time. Mia landed a solo in her dance routine, not the flashy one, but the emotional center of the piece. The teacher told me, "She dances like she knows who she is," and that sentence stayed with me. One night, as I tucked Mia in, she asked, "Mama, did we do something wrong with Grandma and Grandpa?" The question was gentle, curious, no accusation. "No," I said immediately. "You didn't." She nodded, accepting it. Okay. That was it. No follow-up. No guilt. Children don't cling to people who don't reach for them. They adapt. Adults are the ones who complicate loss. Derek and I talked often during that stretch about what we were building now that we weren't constantly bracing for the next crisis. We set up automatic transfers into college funds. We planned a trip to Hawaii, something we talked about for years, but never prioritized because there was always another emergency. We invested, not just financially, emotionally. And then one evening, Derek showed me his phone. A text from my father. "Can we meet for coffee? Just the 2 of us. I owe you an apology." I stared at the message for a long time. In 9 years of marriage, my father had never once asked to spend time with Derek alone. "What do you think?" Derek asked. "I think he's scared," I said honestly, "and I think that's not nothing." "I can go," Derek said. "No promises." 2 days later, Derek came home quieter than usual. He didn't speak right away. He put his keys down carefully, took off his jacket, sat beside me on the couch. "He apologized," he said. "Actually?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "Not, 'I'm sorry you felt that way.'" He named things. My chest tightened. "For treating me like an outsider," Derek continued. "For making assumptions about our kids. For participating in conversations that questioned whether they belonged." I searched his face. "Do you believe him?" Derek considered it. "I think he's terrified," he said. "They lost the house, Celestina. They're renting now. He knows that wasn't bad luck." I nodded slowly. "But," Derek added, "I also think he's thinking. He asked about Caleb's robotics project. Specific questions. He knew details from photos you posted. He asked about Mia's next recital." That landed differently. That evening, my phone rang. Mom. Her voice was different. Not trembling. Not defensive. "We're in family counseling," she said. "Real counseling. Not church sessions. Licensed." I stayed quiet. "We're learning about unconscious bias," she continued. "About how our behavior affected the kids. About how we prioritize comfort over character." I waited. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted you to know we're trying." This was new. Not a request. Not a condition. Just information. "The money is never coming back," I said carefully, "no matter what changes you make." "I understand," she replied immediately. "This family has to live within its means. That's our responsibility." I closed my eyes. If she was performing, she was doing it without cues now. "If you want a relationship with Caleb and Mia," I said, "it has to be because you value them, not because you're hoping things go back to how they were." "I know," she said softly. "I know." 3 months later, we agreed to try something small. Not holidays. Not home. A casual restaurant in Moreno Valley. Everyone paid for their own meal. No expectations. Just observation. I watched my parents like a scientist watching a reaction. My mother asked Caleb about his robotics competition and listened. She didn't interrupt when he got technical. She asked follow-up questions. My father leaned forward when Mia talked about her dance solo. He asked about the music, the costume. He remembered the song name later. When Sophia mentioned her birthday party, my mother turned to my kids and asked, "What would you like to do for your birthdays?" Not as an afterthought, as inclusion. It wasn't perfect. I caught my mother starting to make an excuse once about a neighborhood event, then stopping mid-sentence and correcting herself. But it was effort, unpolished, uncomfortable, real. On the drive home, Mia spoke first. "Grandpa remembered my song," she said quietly. "He didn't last time." Caleb nodded. "And Grandma said she wants me to teach her about robotics." Derek reached for my hand. "Any regrets?" he asked silently. I thought about the house they lost, the year of estrangement, the stress, the anger. Then I thought about my children, learning in real time that love without respect isn't love at all. "None," I mouthed. "Not a single one." The real test didn't come at dinner. It came afterward, when there was no audience. No plates to clear, no checks to split, no polite distractions to hide behind. It came in the days that followed. Quiet days, where effort either continued or evaporated. I waited, and for once I didn't chase. A week after that dinner, my father texted me directly. I was wondering if I could come to Caleb's competition. No pressure. I just wanted to ask. No assumption, no entitlement, no "of course I'll be there" energy. Just a request. I stared at the message longer than necessary, then typed. He'd like that. It's an all-day event. Loud, crowded. "I understand," he replied. "I'll stay as long as he wants me there." I showed the exchange to Derek. "That's different," he said. "It is," I agreed. "But different doesn't mean safe." The competition was held in a high school gym 2 towns over. Rows of folding chairs, buzzing lights, kids pacing with nervous energy, and solder-smudged fingers. Caleb spotted my parents almost immediately. He froze. Not scared. Assessing. Like a tiny gatekeeper deciding who was allowed inside. My father didn't wave, didn't call out. He waited. When Caleb approached, my father knelt. Not dramatically, just enough to be at eye level. "I'm glad you said yes," he told him. "But if you want me to leave at any point, you say the word." Caleb looked at him for a long second, then nodded. "Okay." That was it. No hug, no forgiveness ceremony. Just permission. My mother sat beside me on the bleachers, hands folded tight in her lap. "I don't know any of this," she whispered as robots rolled onto the mat. "But I want to learn." And she did. She stayed the whole day. Asked questions, clapped at the wrong times, and then laughed at herself. When Caleb's team didn't win, she didn't disappear. She congratulated him anyway, praised his design choices, asked what he'd do differently next time. On the drive home, Mia said from the back seat, "Grandma didn't get bored." That sentence hit harder than any apology. A month later, Mia's recital came. I didn't invite my parents. They asked, and they came early, front row, flowers in hand, not because they expected access, but because they wanted to show up. Afterward, my father asked Mia if he could come to her next one too. Not "of course I'll be there," if she wanted him there. Boundaries respected feel different in your body. They don't make you brace. They let you breathe. Still, I didn't let myself soften too quickly, because consistency matters more than remorse. And history doesn't disappear just because the present improves. 3 weeks later, my mother called. "I want to be clear," she said. "We're not asking for help at all. We're budgeting. We downsized again. This is ours to fix." I let the silence sit. "We failed your kids," she added. "And I need you to know we're not expecting trust. We're earning it or we're not." That night, Derek asked me the question I'd been avoiding. "If they keep showing up like this," he said gently, "what does rebuilding look like to you?" I thought about it. Not the fantasy version, the real one. "Slow," I said, "limited, child-centered, and never tied to money." He nodded. "That sounds right." What surprised me wasn't my parents' effort. It was my own restraint. Old me would have rushed to forgive, to smooth, to fix. This version of me, observed, measured, protected. 6 months after the porch, my parents hadn't asked for a single dollar. Not once. Rebecca hadn't either. She sent a text one night that simply said, "I got promoted. No help. Just wanted you to know." I stared at that message for a long time, then replied, "I'm proud of you," and meant it. That winter, we hosted a small dinner at our house. Not a reunion, not a celebration. Just food, conversation, clear boundaries. Everyone brought a dish. No one assumed. As I watched Caleb explain a robot design to my father, who actually took notes, and Mia show my mother her choreography videos, I felt something unfamiliar. Not relief. Not triumph. Peace. The kind that doesn't come from control. The kind that comes from alignment. Later that night, as we cleaned up, Mia leaned against me and whispered, "Mama, are Grandma and Grandpa different now?" I kissed the top of her head. "I think they're trying," I said. She smiled. "That feels nice." From across the room, Derek caught my eye. No words, just understanding. Because the biggest change wasn't in them, it was in me. I no longer confused access with love. I no longer mistook sacrifice for virtue. And I no longer believed family deserved infinite chances at the expense of my children's worth. The story wasn't over, but for the first time, it was honest. Time has a way of revealing whether change is real or just well rehearsed. Weeks passed after that dinner at our house, and I watched carefully, not with suspicion, but with intention. I paid attention to what happened when no one was watching, when there was nothing to gain. My parents didn't call asking for favors. They didn't hint. They didn't test the fence to see if it would bend. Instead, they showed up where it mattered and stayed quiet where they didn't belong. My mother texted Mia before her next recital, not about tickets, not about logistics. Just, "I hope you're excited. I know you've been practicing hard." My father emailed Caleb a YouTube link about a robotics competition and wrote, "Thought you might find this interesting." No follow-up. No pressure. Just interest. That restraint told me more than any apology ever could. Rebecca changed too, but differently. There was no grand self-awareness speech, no confession. Just action. She stopped complaining, stopped narrating her hardship like it was evidence of my cruelty. She sent photos of her Corolla with a joke about finally learning to parallel park. She mentioned budgeting apps. She talked about being tired, but proud. One afternoon, she showed up at Caleb's competition with a bag of sandwiches she'd made herself. Not store-bought, homemade. She handed one to Mia and asked, "Peanut butter or turkey?" Mia chose turkey. No one commented. That mattered. Later that night, Derek and I sat on the porch, watching the twins draw with sidewalk chalk. "Do you feel it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "The difference." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. But it wasn't transactional anymore. And that was everything. Still, I kept the structure firm. Visits stayed short. Group settings over private ones. Kids first always. And never, never money. When my mother once said, "We're thinking about downsizing again," she stopped herself mid-sentence and added, "Not your concern. Just telling you where we're at." That pause mattered. That correction mattered. Because it showed awareness. One evening, as we were driving home from dinner, Caleb spoke from the back seat. "Mom?" "Yes, bud." "I think Grandpa's learning how to be quiet." I smiled despite myself. "What makes you say that?" "He listens now," Caleb said. "Before, he talked like he already knew everything." Mia nodded. "Grandma, too. She doesn't decide for us anymore." I glanced at Derek, my chest tight in the best way. Children notice effort. They don't need perfection. They need sincerity. That night, Derek asked me something I hadn't expected. "If your parents hadn't changed," he said gently, "would you have been okay with cutting them out permanently?" I didn't answer right away.
Because the truth deserved respect.
"Yes," I said finally. "I would have grieved, but I wouldn't have gone back." He nodded. "That's how I know this is different." "How?" "Because you didn't rebuild out of fear," he said. "You rebuilt from choice." That distinction mattered more than anything. Months later, almost a year after the porch, I hosted another dinner. Not to test them. Not to prove anything. Just because I wanted to. Everyone brought food. Everyone cleaned up. No one lingered awkwardly. As I watched my parents laugh with my kids, not louder, not quieter, just normally, I felt something settle deep in my bones. Not closure. Not forgiveness wrapped in a bow. Acceptance. Of what was. Of what had been lost. Of what had been rebuilt on stronger ground. I wasn't the family ATM anymore. I wasn't the peacekeeper. I wasn't the one swallowing discomfort so others could stay comfortable. I was a mother, and that was enough. When the night wound down and guests filtered out, Mia tugged my sleeve. "Mama?" "Yes?" "I like this family better," she said. "So do I replied. Because this family, this version, didn't run on scraps. It ran on respect, 1 year after the porch. That's how I measure time now. Not by holidays or birthdays, but by before and after the moment I stopped pretending. That evening, we hosted dinner again. Not because it was symbolic, not because anyone suggested it, because it felt normal. My parents arrived with a casserole they'd cooked themselves. No announcements. No, we brought this because we didn't want to be a burden. Just food, just effort. Rebecca showed up 10 minutes late, breathless, apologizing. Not excessively, just honestly. She'd come straight from work. She looked tired, but lighter somehow, like someone who'd stopped fighting reality and started living inside it. Caleb greeted them at the door. Not cautiously, not eagerly, comfortably. That was the difference. Mia dragged my mother into the living room to show her a new routine she'd been choreographing on her own. My mother watched, really watched, and clapped at the end like it mattered. Because it did. At the table, everyone sat where there was space. No hierarchy, no kids' table energy. Everyone ate the same food, together. Halfway through dinner, I caught my father looking at the twins with an expression I hadn't seen before. Not assessment, not discomfort, regret. The kind that doesn't ask to be soothed, the kind that knows it has no right to demand forgiveness. After dessert, while the kids were in the backyard with Derek, my mother helped me rinse dishes. She didn't sigh dramatically, didn't narrate her effort. She just stood there beside me, passing plates. Celestina, she said quietly, not looking up, I need to say something without you fixing it for me. I nodded. We didn't just fail your children, she said. We failed you. We taught you that love meant paying, accommodating, shrinking. That's on us. My throat tightened, but I didn't interrupt. I don't expect absolution, she continued. I just want you to know, we finally understand what it cost you. I turned off the water and looked at her. Understanding doesn't erase the past, I said, but it changes the future. She nodded. That's fair. When everyone left that night, Derek locked the door and leaned back against it, exhaling. You okay? He asked. I looked around the living room, at crumbs on the table, abandoned cups, chalk drawings smudged into the patio concrete. Yes, I said, I am. Later, as I tucked Mia into bed, she curled against me and whispered, Mama, I'm glad we taught them how to love us. I pressed my lips to her hair, heart full in a way that felt earned. So am I, baby. From the doorway, Caleb added, and if they forget again, we won't eat scraps. No, I said softly, we won't. That night, lying beside Derek in the dark, I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who confused generosity with obligation. The one who believed peace was something you purchased. The one who thought family deserved endless chances, no matter the cost. That woman didn't protect her children. This one does. Because here's the truth. I wish I'd learned sooner. Love without respect isn't love. Family without dignity isn't family. And anyone who requires you to shrink so they can stay comfortable is not entitled to your sacrifice. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling harm. Sometimes the people who love you need to lose access to you to understand your value. And sometimes they actually learn. But even if they don't, your children still will. And that's what matters.